All the people said amen. Amen. Let us praise God for our layman leading us in our devotion. Amen, amen. As you remain standing, would you open your Bibles to Luke chapter 4. Luke chapter 4, verses 18 and 19. If you're there and ready to read, would you say, praise the Lord?
Praise the Lord.
Won't you read those two verses together?
The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because He has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and the recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty
Amen. We want to continue our study, the church evangelizing. Won't you repeat it after me this time? The church evangelizing. You may be seated. And as we've mentioned before throughout the series, the text says that Jesus was in the synagogue. And as was accustomed for the synagogue, someone would read the scriptures. All right. Jesus, the lot fell on him. And this is the passage that he chose to read. All right. Passage that has become known to us from the book of Isaiah, chapter 61. Amen. It says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he's anointed me to preach. Yes. He uses that word preach 3 times in these 2 verses. Preach the gospel to the poor. Preach deliverance to the captives. Yes. And to preach the acceptable year of the Lord. Amen. The implications of the word preach is, first of all, evangelizo. So when he uses preach the gospel, it really means to proclaim. It is to evangelize. And the context is, it is to proclaim good news. So the church is busy giving good news to a bad world. And that's one way to just summarize evangelism, that we are busy telling good news to a bad world. And then he says, not only have I been anointed to proclaim good news to the poor, but I've also been anointed to preach, to herald, to proclaim deliverance to the captives. Now, in order for us to identify what the good news is, who we are to proclaim it to gives us a clue what we ought to be saying. All right. If we're going to preach good news to the poor, then it must be something good that poor folk didn't expect to hear. Amen. If it's good news to those who are captives, it must be a message that those who are in prison didn't expect to hear. Amen. And so when we go evangelizing, we're not going to proclaim doom, death, and disaster. We're proclaiming good news. Amen. The concept that Jesus would have us to grasp is that those who are poor and those who are captives are poor and they're captives because an oppressive system arranged it so that they would be poor and that they would be captives. And so the only good news that they can hear is that either that system has changed or that there's another system they don't have to be oppressed by. So then, if we're going to preach good news to the poor and preach good news to the captives, we have to have a message that the world does not provide. And this is where living out our faith becomes so critical, because if the message we proclaim isn't working for us, we won't have confidence when we proclaim it to them. Right. It's kind of difficult telling somebody that Jesus will deliver you from a crack addiction when he can't break you from the addiction of watching TV. And so if he hadn't helped you with your addiction, then you ought not suggest that what you are doing will help them with their addiction. And so we have to live out our faith so that we can see if our faith works. Faith that can't be tested is a faith that can't be trusted. And this is the reason why much of what's commonly preached, I am a strong opponent of, because when I first heard it decades ago now and tried it, it didn't work for me. And then when I got close to those who were preaching it, I found out it wasn't working for them. And many were honest enough to say, but it's what the people want to hear. If I share the truth, one put it this way, he says, I've got kids in college. I've got to keep the crowd at least until they graduate. And so then at that point, if it wasn't working for me and I wasn't preaching it, and it wasn't working for them and they were preaching it, then it caused me to really do a deeper investigation of what the word really said. And then when I began to see that the word was not saying what folk are saying that it said, then I realized that most people in Christendom have been hoodwinked by a message that sounds good, but it's neither sound nor good. I hope you caught that. And it just sounds good. It's appealing to the ear, but it's not acceptable to an honest heart. Because there's something in us that knows that it's not true. And so we cannot say to the poor that if you had more faith, you wouldn't be poor. Because that would suggest that all of us could just get more faith and quit working. We know that's not a financial plan. That's not the message that Jesus preached. Jesus did not preach even the message that if you had more faith, you could go to court and they would soften your sentence. That's not the message he preached. Jesus was preaching a radical message of a kingdom that was diametrically opposed to the oppressive world system that had them poor and had them captives. And so evangelism is us saying to the world, we've got another message. Right. And the message only works if there's a kingdom that has authorized it. Oh, I hope y'all hear that. Because if we're not operating based upon the premise and principles of the kingdom, then there is no kingdom for the message to operate in. Amen. If I say to people who are in Birmingham that times are tough, but there's another city that if you love everybody, they'll love you back. And if you give, people will give back. And people say, I want to be a part of that city. And I say, but I don't know where it is. Well, that negates the message. And so the church then should be the living organism of the kingdom on earth in operation. The living organism of the kingdom on earth in operation. So then when we say things like, Father, forgive them of their sins, that really doesn't work when you say it if you haven't forgiven them. Your asking for their pardon presupposes that you have already pardoned them. And so the message doesn't work unless there's a kingdom that authorizes the practice and preaching of the message. They did not crucify Jesus because he healed the sick. There was no problem with that. They crucified Jesus because people were believing his message. And his message was liberating those who the world system profited from their oppression. And all you got to do is study world history, American history, and you will always see that whenever a people come with a message of liberation, they face opposition. And so Jesus is not an aberration from that. It's always the case. And so the church then, being so user-friendly in America, implies that we're not preaching a message that's diametrically opposed to the world system. And so if we give a message that does not confront the system, then we become complicit with the crooked system. So we have the responsibility of saying to a world, you are corrupt. And as a result of your corruption, there are victims of your corruption. But we, to the victims, have some good news. All right. Now, if you just take some moments and meditate on that, that's hint and clue enough that when people realize that we have a message diametrically opposed to the world's message that oppresses them, and then we're operating in a kingdom that's diametrically opposed to the world system that endorses the oppressive message, people will rush to hear this message again. There's a passage in the book of Acts where Paul preached the gospel. And many who heard him said, can you be here next Sabbath to preach that sermon again? And then the whole city came the next Sabbath to hear him preach the same sermon. Because people are looking for a message of liberation. We have to make sure we have good news, but the good news is consistent with the message Jesus preached. Jesus did not preach anywhere that as praises go up, blessings would come down. He did not preach anywhere, name it, claim it, it's yours. Never preached that. He was addressing a culture, and he was exposing truth and erasing error about the culture and declaring that I came to do the exact opposite of what this crooked culture is doing. The thief cometh but to steal, kill, and to destroy. That's the oppressive culture. But I have come that they may have life and have it more abundantly. I come to seek and to save those that are lost. So he has good news and he's heralding it. And here's the good thing about having good news, that when you are confident that it's good news, there's no reason to be bashful about telling it.
All right.
Now, if I got to come and ask you to loan me some money, I might practice my speech on how I'm going to say it and when's the right time to say it and imagining how you're going to respond when I say it. But if I got good news that I want to give you somebody, I don't have to rehearse no speech. I have subject and verbs not agreeing at all. And you'll hear that message and say, I'm so glad you said that to me. And so when we have good news, we don't have to be bashful about telling it, because if people reject it, it's their loss, not ours. So then when we look at the fact that sometimes we are bashful about sharing the gospel, it's because generally the gospel has been taught to us as bad news. It's us telling people, get your life right. Straighten up. And then we're bashful because we have to make sure that they don't know too much about us to tell us, you get your life right. And so we find ourselves really fearful about giving what should be good news. And so Jesus says, I'm anointed to herald it, to proclaim it, to just tell everybody. Now, one of the reasons why the local church has officers is so that the officers can handle tasks that do not fit in our priority, so that the church does not have to be distracted by those things that are not in our priority. For instance, shame on the church who can't get around to evangelism because every member is stressed over how we're going to pay the light bill. We can't think about evangelism. We got to sell some chicken dinners. And so you have officers in place who say, we got this. We'll handle this. So the congregation doesn't have to be stressed about this, because these things are not our mission. They're things we have to handle, and we handle them so they don't distract us from the mission. And that's why prayer meeting becomes far more important than business meeting. Because the whole church should be praying, but there should be people in position who will handle those menial tasks so that the church does not have to be distracted by those menial tasks when it's time to do ministry. And so deacons handle the table of the pastor, making sure the pastor is taken care of, which means the pastor should not have to go to members saying, you know, I'm hungry. Can y'all fix me something to eat? A church would be distracted from evangelism if they know the pastor is begging for food. How are you going to share the gospel and your spiritual leader got a tin cup? Somebody, can somebody give me something? The table of the poor. That is to make sure that the church takes care of those who are impoverished, more particularly those who be of the household of the faith. Which says, once again, same thing, that those who are faithful to the work of the church and the ministry of the church, who fall on hard times, there ought to be a ministry to take care of them so they don't have to be continuously stressed about their finances and they can't get around the ministry. And then the ministry handles it so the whole church doesn't have to know their business. The table of the Lord's Supper. That's the ordinances of the church. So that those things are handled so that the overwhelming majority of the church is involved in ministry. Most people who come to church on Sunday don't work on Sunday, not church work. I preach, the ordinances of the church, the deacons help me with the ordinance of the church, the choir sings, ushers usher. But most people, the hardest thing you do in church work on Sunday is worship. And some don't even do that. And so your service to God generally does not take place on Sundays. And so you therefore are equipped on Sundays and Tuesdays so that you can do the work of the ministry throughout the rest of the week. And because of that, it does not take you having to do a whole lot. Just being committed to what you say you're committed to doing, carrying it out consistently, so that if you say, I will handle this, we know that's handled. Some years ago we had our vision meetings, and we'll move back to having vision meetings again, where ministries just tell the church what they are doing and what the plan is based upon the mission of that ministry. We'll go back to having our newsletter, where we'll have those things in print. Thanks to technology, we can have printed newsletters and we can have emails. So that those who want to use technology to get the information can get the information. So that we're not distracted by those menial things, but we are focused on ministry. Because that's what Jesus has called the church to do. Jesus did not say to the church, go into all the world and build buildings. He did not say go into all the world and purchase vehicles. He said go into all the world and make disciples. Now, it may take, having buildings may help you do that. Vehicles may help you do that. Choirs may help you do that, but that's not what he told us to do. He told us to make disciples of all nations. Trustees make sure that the property and legal issues of the church are taken care of so that the congregation does not have to be stressed over those matters. Those menial tasks are handled by those in ministry. The disciples says it's not meet, it's not right for us to leave the word of God and serve tables. So we will appoint men over this business so that we can keep doing what's most important. And so the church's mission, church mission statement defines and describes what should be our priority. Discipleship. Exposing truth. Busy. Church busy. Exposing truth and erasing error. Busy. Excuse me. Now, if we're going to expose truth and erase error, we cannot be so wedded to a political party that we aren't objective. Reporter who used to be on CNN, I don't know where she is now, Christiane Amanpour, made this statement that objectivity is not the same as neutrality.
All right.
to remain neutral in the face of evil is to become complicit with the injustice.
All right.
We cannot be so wedded to a political party that we cannot confront whomever.
All right.
The black church failed under the Obama administration because we looked at his race, and I think we looked at the opposition he faced, and we decided we were going to support him come hell or high water. We did that with Clinton. And it didn't matter what policies were implemented or not implemented. We didn't even care. We were just going to be defenders of our first black president we called Bill Clinton. And then our first real black president, Barack Obama. Now, if you don't think that's too bad, then we have to remember we have criticized the right-wing conservatives who calls themselves the Christian right, which are probably neither Christian nor right. But they are completely biased towards the other political party. And so they lack a sense of objectivity. They're so unobjective that they would choose to call a candidate a real Christian, even though he said in 2 Corinthians.
Oh, yeah. All right. All right. All right.
So they are unobjective on one end, and we have been unobjective on the other end, and as a result, we become more political than spiritual.
Right.
The church has to be firm enough to say to the system, no matter who is sitting in the seat of power, if you're wrong, you're wrong.
Amen.
One of the things that made Dr. Martin King so powerful is that he confronted whoever.
Amen. Amen.
When he felt the nation was wrong and how it treated its citizens, he confronted it.
All right.
When he felt that the nation was wrong and how it was handling people in other countries through war, the Vietnam War, he confronted that. And his own people were saying, hush, leave that alone.
All right.
But he felt that his moral responsibility was to expose truth and erase error. And just like it was done with Jesus, when he did the same thing, they killed him.
All right.
And so now, the church is almost goes unnoticed in America because we've lost our voice to confront crooked systems. We'll go to prisons and tell folks behind bars,
Yes.
you need to get your life right. So when you die, you can go to heaven. They want us to go preach that because what we're saying to them is, become a good moral citizen. But the moral code they set up is the oppressive moral code. So we are to be busy exposing truth and erasing error, which is discipleship. We ought to be busy in worship while we exalt the Savior. We must be busy with fellowship. And fellowship is more than 2 fellows in a ship. It's us edifying one another, building up each other. It is literally saying that when you find other brothers and sisters in the faith who are going through difficult times, and I'm not, at this point, I'm not even talking about difficult times based upon this world system. I'm talking about difficult times because of their effort to serve God. Think about Paul's words in Romans, when I would do good. And the emphasis there is when I would do good, evil is always present. If I wanted to do evil, it'd be one thing. The problem is I want to do good. And it just seems like this principle is unchanging. Every time I resolve to do good, opportunities for evil show up. Another passage says if your brother is overtaken in a fault, the word overtaken means he was literally trying to do good and got caught in a fault in the process. It's a picture of someone running a race. And in the process of running a race, they have an injury. They would have avoided the injury if they hadn't been in a race. But because they were in the race, they got injured. That verse is saying when they get injured, they don't need a lecture from you on how to avoid injuries. But restore them. Because one day you're going to be running and you may get the same injury. And so fellowship then is finding those who are seeking to do God's will, who in the process face hardships and difficulties that if they quit, they could avoid them. Folk lying on them, but the only reason they're lying on them is because they're doing good. If they stop doing good, folk will stop lying. It says, so when you find them, fellowshipping is building them up. Saying to them what you're going through is worth it for what is going to reap in the long run. And so people should know that if they're trying to do God's will, that if I can just get to 23rd Street. Yeah. That's what Asaph went through. I looked at the wicked. I became envious at the foolish when I saw their prosperity. My foot almost slipped. When I went to the sanctuary, I got to church. And then I got clarity on really what's going on. That ought to be the attitude that if you're going through these spiritual challenges, let's hope it happens on Saturday. Because at least you'll be at church the next day. If it happens on Monday, well, at least I'll be at church tomorrow evening. But if it happens on Wednesday, oh Lord, I got to wait all the way to Sunday. I can't wait to get back to church. Because I know if I get there, somebody's going to build me up. Evangelizing the sinner, and then ministry, enabling the seeker. That's what we are called to do. And so just like Cleveland and Golden State will not call their season a success if they lose in the finals, we should not call what we're doing a success if we're not making disciples. Just because we have good church services, that doesn't mean we're successful. If we're having good church services amongst the folk we know and like. Come on, help me somebody. The late Dr. Benjamin E. Mays, who was superintendent of schools in Atlanta, said that he felt he was accomplishing what he was there to accomplish, because there were whites and blacks on the school board, and he was able to get them to work together so that they did not vote racially, but they voted what was in the best interest of the students. That's how we know we're doing what God has called us to do, when we're able to worship God even amongst folk who don't think like us. But people whose socioeconomic backgrounds are different than ours, people whose experiences are different than ours, people even whose race and culture is different than ours, can come here and leave saying, oh, we were in the presence of the Lord today. And then we become more diverse, because there's some people you can reach that others can't reach. And if all of us look alike, sound alike, think alike, we can only reach one type of person. But when the congregation is diverse, now we can reach a diverse audience with the same message. It's still good news. Because here's what you would discover is that, and that's the reason why we're so divided as a nation, is because African Americans feel like whites are keeping us oppressed. And then poor whites are feeling like they are suffering because of the colors. Them colors. We're both dealing with oppression. We're just pointing the finger at different people. And if we have good news that says the system is designed to keep all of us oppressed, 3% of the people own 97% of the wealth. So it's not just black people oppressed. We think it is. But many of those social programs that we vote for, more of them use them than we do. It's not just us oppressed, but as long as we can point the finger in our race, light-skinned blacks point the finger against black, dark-skinned blacks. Then when one of us get assaulted by somebody who's from the white culture, we come together and say it's the whites. And then the whites point the finger and say it's them blacks. And we're never pointing the finger at the 3% that's pulling the strings behind the scenes. Willie Lynch, that letter is not a joke. If you keep people divided against each other, you don't have to worry about them fighting against you. One of the first people who learned to master that are kids. Because they learn how to turn mama and daddy against each other to get what they want. Kevin Hart told that story. He said, his daughter said, "Can I have a cookie?" And he said, "Yeah, baby, let's go get a cookie." And his mama screamed, "I told her she didn't get no cookie." And she said, "Dad, I thought you would have hit it out."
All right.
And if you can keep people divided, they will never see you as the culprit.
All right.
So we've got to confront the crooked system, expose it, so that those who are victims of it will see that Jesus offers something diametrically opposed to it. And so when they come in our presence, particularly when we gather together, they see something that doesn't look like what they've been seeing all week. When they get to work, they see folk backbiting and bickering and fighting for position and fighting for promotions. And then they get here and find out we're trying to bless each other. Come on, help me somebody. They find us encouraging one another. They find us edifying each other. And then they find themselves saying, you know what? I like church better than what I experienced Monday through Saturday. I want to go to church more. And then they find out we got ministries through the week. And in the ministries, we're still edifying each other and still blessing each other. Now they find themselves wanting to join a ministry. And they become addictive to the kind of kingdom environment that Jesus teaches us to have. So then they leave church, go into the world saying, y'all need to come over here. Because over here, we are praising God and blessing each other. We love each other unconditionally. We don't have all that foolishness and all that mess over here. You need to come over here. And then folks say, really, sure enough? It's like that for real? And then they show up, not so much because they want to hear a good sermon.
All right.
They want to belong to a ministry where people are blessing each other. And then when they get here, they find out it's the preaching that teaches us how to do that. And then they say, I want to hear that again. That's what evangelism is. It's about us proclaiming good news of a kingdom that authorizes us to speak to the oppressed and give them a message that says Jesus has something else in store. And if you know that he has something in store for you, it's because you've encountered him. And if you've encountered him, your soul ought to be a witness. And if your soul ought to be a witness, you can say, when I think of the goodness of Jesus and all that he's done for me, my soul shouts hallelujah, thank you for saving me. And then you find yourself saying, every day with Jesus is sweeter than the day before, because Jesus is all the world to me. My life, my joy, my all. He's my strength from day to day. Without him, I fall. When I'm sad, to him I go. No other one can cheer me. So when I'm sad, he makes me glad. He's my friend. Hey, that's the good news. You say you don't have any friends, well, guess what? You can have the best friend that God ever provided. What a friend we have in Jesus. All our sins. And there's not a friend like the Lord Jesus. No, not one. It's a whole nother world when you encounter Jesus. That's why whenever I'm given the opportunity to stand and proclaim God's word, I give it my best. Because somebody is in the crowd saying, I want to hear that again. Oh, I wish y'all would pray with me. Somebody saying, I've been going through all this foolishness. I came to God's house to hear some good news. Every head is bowed. Every eye is closed. Every person who's believed on that message, just thank God for the good news. And then when you finish praying and praising, stand on your feet, or you can stand while you pray.